Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. For our next speech, let us welcome Director Diane Faith Figueroa of Innovative Finance RARE. 欢迎各位回到会场。在接下来的专题演讲中，我们非常荣幸邀请到 RARE 印太区创新金融主任 Diane Faith Figueroa 女士为我们分享，让我们掌声欢迎。
All right, so good afternoon, everyone. I would like to take this opportunity to thank once again the organizers of this event. It's my first time in Taiwan, and I'm glad that I have the opportunity to share my expertise to you. Not really expertise, I don't want to consider myself an expert, but more of like share my experience to all of you. Yesterday, or the past 2 days have been quite intense for me. It's a bit out of my comfort zone. I'm not really into marine security. I'm more of a finance person, but then it was really intense, but definitely worthwhile, and I learned a lot. So I hope you don't mind if I bring you to my world for the next 30 minutes and share more about financing for the ocean. But before that, I'm gonna share a bit more about, do you just wanna, okay, maybe I have to click twice. So I'm gonna share a bit more, just a brief background of the entity that I'm associated with. I'm from RARE. It's an international non-government organization based out of Arlington. We're in 10 other different geographies, and in Asia, we have presence in Philippines and Indonesia. And RARE is actually, we have a big behavior center. It's an in-house behavior center, and we use behavior-centered approach to inspire change so that people and nature can both thrive. We have several global programs, but I'm only gonna discuss two, which I think is very relevant to OAC. One of which is our Fish Forever program. So our Fish Forever program focuses on community-based coastal resource management. So you heard it right. A lot of like coastal resource management are run top-down, but at RARE we believe that we have to really engage the local community. They have to be at the forefront of conservation. They have to be at the forefront of resource management for it to be more durable. But I'm not gonna talk about Fish Forever now, because I'll be talking more about one of our other pillar programs, of which I am part of, and that is our RARE Fish for, sorry. Yeah, can I just say next? Yeah. Okay, RARE Innovative Finance team. In our team, we try to channel more capital, so more capital into resource management. And I think I'm bringing the lens of, early this morning we were talking about blue economy industries. They're industries that are really there's a clear profit pathway. But for me, I think I'm bringing the lens of like the part of the blue economy that needs investments but are not necessarily very investable or bankable. Next, please. I think you have seen this, you're not new to all these lofty goals that we have. You're familiar with SDG, you're familiar with the famous 30 by 30, and I've heard it several times during the conference, something that Taiwan is very proud of, the Marine Conservation Act. And of course, as we have these lofty goals, I always, wearing my finance hat, I will always say, with the lofty goals also comes the lofty price tags. And my question would really be, how do we pay for all these plans to be in place? Thus the need for sustainable financing. Next slide, please. I'm gonna go through this very quickly because early this morning we have already been talking about financing gap. Just I'm gonna look at SDG 14 itself. It says 174 billion funding needs and only 25 billion current spend. So that leaves us about 149 billion funding gap. So it's something like, it's like impossible dream, right? Unreachable. And if you also go to the next slide, please. If we only talk about 30 by 30, which looks at really conserving 30% of both land and ocean by 2030, there is also a very significant funding need, and of course, very low current spending, leaving us with another very lofty and very huge financing gap. But all this, sometimes when we listen to these figures, they seem so far-fetched, almost like it's unreal. So I'm gonna give you a local perspective of the financing gap. So in the Philippines, next slide please, we conducted a financial model, next slide, financial model for sustainable coastal resource management. So what we did was we went to the local government units, and as RARE, we really make sure that this is all stakeholder informed. So what we did was we interviewed all the pertinent actors of coastal resource management. We look at all the activities that would enable them to manage their coastal resources. And this is what we found out. Next slide, please. Okay, so just to show you, we covered all the activities under this like overarching activities, profiling, legislation, institutional development. So we went through each, like to the point, like for profiling, what do you need, how many workshops, hotel accommodations, just everything, all the costs necessary for all these activities to take place. And this is just a sample for one of the local government units. They have a total, this is in peso by the way, we have 38, one LGU has 38 million cost, estimated cost of resource management. And then when we ask them, and that's on an annual basis, but when we ask them, like how much are you actually spending, or even budgeting, even not actual expense. And an average for the 5 LGUs, next slide please, they're actually only budgeting around 400,000 per year. So it's not even 10% of the total like funding needed for them to be able to sustainably manage their coastal resources. So that gives us a more local context of what funding gap really is. It exists. So if we think that the 30 by 30 or the SDG funding gaps are quite like far-fetched, this one is real. And this is also very stakeholder informed. Next slide, please. And I think we already know the sources. I always say money is there. So it's not a matter of availability of funds. Funds is there, but it's just that we are not able to tap, particularly the players of the blue economy, particularly those that are not very visibly or like visibly profitable. So if you look at the sources of capital for ocean conservation, philanthropy gives about 1.3. Public funding, including ODA, gives about 1.4, so roughly 3.3 in total. But then the bulk of the money is really with the private sector, particularly with the institutional investors. But if you look at the portfolio of the private sector, particularly institutional investors, they might have some portfolio, but they barely scratch the surface of ocean conservation. So that's a challenge that we're trying to address, one idea at a time or one financing mechanism at a time. Next slide, please. So I think you've heard, I'm not sure if you've already heard about blended finance. It's really just making sure that someone has to put a stake first. Someone has to invest first before others will follow. It's like more of like a peer pressure. Yeah, so, and usually the first to put funding are to invest are really the philanthropic and the public funders. Then when the private sector will see, they actually have a stake, they're willing to invest, then that's the time that they might also invest as well. So your initial funding, initial investment will catalyze bigger investments, particularly from the private sector. So that's something I always hear of blended finance. I've been with RARE for almost 6 years. And yeah, I've always heard of blended finance, but sometimes it's good to have these ideas, but sometimes how does it really work in practice? So right now I'm gonna give you 2 attempts for us to do blended financing. So I'm gonna share with you 2 financing mechanisms that we have tried in collaboration with partners, both technical partners, and even other stakeholders, even from the government, where we tried to crack the code. Yeah, but it's work in progress. So first case study, small scale fishery impact bond. So it's actually first of its kind in the world. There are only about 230 plus impact bonds in the world, and this is the first for small-scale fishery. We have this ongoing. We just launched it early this year, and we have its pilot implementation is ongoing in Southeast Sulawesi, Indonesia. So when you talk of impact bond, it's actually a misnomer. It's not really a bond, but it's really outcome-based financing. Essentially, what it means is that investors do the initial investment, but they are only paid when the outcomes are met. So it's a bit risky on their part, 50-50. They can get paid or they cannot get paid. But it's really because we wanted to make sure that implementation is effective so that the agreed outcomes are met and then the investors are paid. So these are some of the the players of the impact bond. Next slide, please. So investors, so as mentioned, they provide upfront capital to the fund or intervention. And by the way, these are investments to activities that are not really bankable. So you will notice that the outcomes are not really profit bearing. So it's double effort or double challenge to really get investors to invest in this. So investors provide the upfront capital. And then we have the outcome funders who commit to paying for the specific outcomes once they are achieved. And there's also a service provider who actually makes sure that the outcomes are achieved. And then there's a third-party verifier. So you cannot just say, I achieved the outcomes as an implementer. A third party, usually an academic institution, so academics, members of the academy, very important in a financing structure. They're going to do a third-party assessment and see if the outcomes are actually met based on the agreed metrics. And then we also have some intermediaries. Usually it's optional, but in the pilot stage, we actually have intermediaries who help us in structuring, who helped us in managing our performance. Okay, so I'm sure you're quite curious about what are the outcomes? What are the basis for payment to the investors? So just a brief overview of the instrument. It's very small. I heard earlier that we don't need more pilots, but I think in this space we need pilots because pilots are it's the gateway for us to build proof of concept, and that will help us scale. So this one is very small, $6 million instrument, 5 years duration, location in Southeast Sulawesi, and these are the sample metrics. 3 new marine reserves established to protect coastal marine areas. Fish biomass stabilize or increase. Benthic coverage, coral and other seagrass stabilize or increase. So these are some of the metrics. They're actually very hard to they're hard to reach, but then that's a commitment. That's the commitment of the implementer. Okay, so you might say, okay, for OAC, that's not very applicable to us. Maybe that's applicable to the fisheries agency that's part of the Ministry of Agriculture. But what's good about this instrument is it's actually scalable and it's actually applicable to any sector, actually. So if this is not something within the mandate of a ministry or maybe a mandate of an organization or a country, because the one in Indonesia, we work closely with the Ministry of Marine Affairs. So it's a government entity. Yeah. So if it's not applicable or it's not aligned to your mandate, we can actually change it. Yeah, we can actually adapt the metrics to your mandate. So for instance, if you're really into marine pollution, I know OAC is marine pollution. So maybe your agreed metrics could be on reduction of plastic waste collected per kilometer of coastline, proper waste disposal system setup, or decrease in reported illegal dumping events. Those are just sample metrics. But of course, when we disagree on the metrics, we have to make sure that we have historical data. So that's why science, this is a financing mechanism, but it's really a collaboration between a lot of stakeholders, financiers, members of the academe, and so on. And then if you're actually into mangrove protection, then you can also really just adapt or change your metrics to those that are applicable to mangrove protection or restoration as well. Okay. So that's the first financing mechanism that we tried to explore. Right now, we have secured a letter of interest from the government of the Philippines, particularly the Ministry of Environment. They have agreed that we do a regulatory analysis to check if the legal environment or the regulatory framework of the Philippines is really enabling for this kind of instrument to actually be implemented or to be scaled or replicated in the Philippines. And there are other partners who are saying, if you want economies of scale, we can actually also push for a regional impact bond. But yeah, that's on the works. But for now, we are doing it per country. Okay, that's the first one. So I promise you two, right? So here's the second one. Who among you here has insurance? Do you have insurance? Yeah, life insurance, car insurance. Okay, so yeah, so would you ever think that we can actually also have insurance for natural ecosystems? So RARE also, in collaboration with 4 other entities, it's actually part of a regional study of ADB. So it's conducted in 3 other countries: Indonesia, Solomon Islands, and Fiji. Yeah, so RARE is the one managing the work in the Philippines. So we look into designing coral reef insurance. So next slide, please. So just I know some of you are already familiar with with parametric insurance, but for the benefit of those who are not. So if you have like a traditional insurance, what you usually do, for instance, let's just use car insurance as an example. So when, for instance, your car figured into an accident, what you do is you call the insurer, and they're going to schedule, or they're going to have an insurance adjuster. They're going to assess the damage, and then they're going to say, okay, we're going to pay you this much based on the assessed damage. Yeah, it's actually, but for that setup might be good for some, but okay, I'm just trying to check my, if I have, okay, I have 10 more minutes. So, but that's actually not very practical, particularly for coastal communities, because insurers, they are usually far-flung. And then we have a lot of anecdotes saying that, like, we lost our boats, and then it has been 6 months and we haven't received anything. So it also means loss of income. Okay, but what's good about the parametric insurance is that the payout is based on a pre-agreed trigger or pre-agreed parameter. And usually the payouts are quicker. it's like always less than 30 days. So compared to the traditional insurance, which will take more, sometimes maximum of 6 months. For really far-flung coastal communities, it can reach up to 1 year for just a very small payout. Next slide, please. Okay, so for the Philippines, we went to this beautiful island called Siargao Islands. It's very beautiful. It's the surfing capital of the Philippines, but it's also very vulnerable. We did a lot of vulnerability analysis for their coral reef. And then this was based on the combined expertise of RARE and other technical experts. It was highly recommended that we do typhoon coral reef insurance. So the basis for the payout is actually an agreed threshold of wind speed. And when that wind speed threshold is reached, then a payout is automatically implemented. So no need for an adjuster to go to your area and see, oh, what's the extent of the damage? Did you ruin your house? Did you lose your boat? So for as long as you're in that area and you're enrolled in a parametric insurance product, when weather data shows that you have your area has reached breached the threshold of wind speed, agreed wind speed, then everyone enrolled in a parametric insurance product will receive their payouts. So it's very efficient. It's very effective. And then funds can actually be used right away for. So the thing here is that Siargao was actually hit by a really big typhoon. And then we asked them, when the typhoon hit Siargao, did you ever think of your corals? They're very highly dependent on corals as well because they're a tourism industry. And then they have, aside from surfing, they also have like diving activities. So we asked them, have you ever thought of your coral reefs? Have you ever thought of restoring them during the aftermath of the typhoon? And they said no, because we were very busy trying to restore the basic services, but no one thought about coral reefs. Yeah, so this particular insurance funds will actually go to coral reef damage assessment, removal of debris, and of course, emergency reef restoration activities. And it's not just typhoon. It really depends upon the feasibility or the availability of data. So for instance, if your location is not really prone to typhoon, but it's prone to other weather disturbances, then we can also tailor the product for that. So next slide, please. So instead of typhoon, we can go for marine pollution. Yeah, triggered by the detection of oil spills or pollution plumes in coastal waters. And again, science is needed for this because the basis for payout are really hardcore data. Or if not marine pollution, maybe coral bleaching. Then yeah, triggered by heating wicks, degree heating wicks, or sea surface temperature anomalies. And again, data sources are very scientific as well. So what we realized as we try to come up with these financing mechanisms is it cannot be designed in silos. It's designed with the community, it's designed with technical experts, and it's designed in collaboration with civil society organizations as well. Yeah, next slide. So I think that's really it. I just gave you a snapshot of 2 of our products. We have more, but I gave you 2 that I think is more like relevant to this event. And yeah, they're not perfect. They're not, but they're real and they're working. So I think our goal is not to really look for perfection, but really start to pilot, start to test, start to adapt, and develop that proof of concept that these things are actually possible. So with that, I end my presentation, unless you have questions for me. Thank you. Questions? I hope I did not bore you with the finance stuff.
我们现在开放观众提问。
Thank you so much for this very interesting and profound explanation. I was just wondering about the possibilities of scaling up these wonderful initiatives. And because you have familiarized us with two cases, and do you have any experiences with scaling up any of the two that you mentioned, or maybe some other projects? Thank you.
Yeah. So actually, the two are different. So the small-scale fishery impact bond is the first. So we are about to scale it. So we are still in the pilot stage, but there are already a lot of interest from the government at the sovereign level because they think it's an effective way to raise money. And it's not really effective way to raise money and more effective use of their financial resources. Because as you see, the impact bond, if the government comes in as an outcome funder, if the outcomes are not met, they will not have any risk at all. They're not going to pay anything at all. So they just have to allocate. But if it's not met, then they're not gonna. They don't need to pay. The second, coral reef insurance, it's actually a scale already because there are already several coral reef insurance pilots. One of it is actually the one piloted in Mexico. So we tried to get the learnings from Mexico and put it in the context of the 4 countries. Yeah. So yeah, definitely it's that's why I believe in pilots. We pilot in Mexico. Now we're into 4 countries. And then Palau is also very curious about it and wants to also investigate how that can be implemented in their country. Thank you. Yes.
请问还有观众希望提问吗 ？Any more questions?
Yes, sir.
So, sorry, it's going to be a very naive question. I hardly understand my personal insurance. But I was thinking about the incentives that are created by the insurance schemes that you're talking about. On one hand, I can understand a community buys insurance to preserve a reef because it's a source of economic income against a natural disaster. That makes perfect sense to me. But if it comes to sort of the pollution blooms, if it's an individual company or an individual property owner, it makes a lot of sense. I own a beach resort. I'm buying. I'm buying this insurance. But if it's a community, does that create disincentives to solve the actual problem?
No,
This is what I'm very familiar with the fact that I believe due to I come from a different sector, but all of the illicit oil transfers that are taking place just to the east of in the northeast of the Strait of Singapore is a disaster waiting to happen. And soon, the east coast, of Bintan Island or of Johor or Singapore is going to be decimated. But if they could have insurance, maybe it's easier to buy insurance than actually solve the problem. So how does that work?
So part of
it sounds like I'm arguing. I'm really trying to understand.
Yeah, sure. So part of the process actually is like regulatory analysis, and part of it is really asking stakeholders, because anyone could be a policyholder, but it really depends upon whether they have insurable interests, meaning like if the like a oil spill happens, then that would entail like a significant economic disruption on their part. Or another insurable interest could really be like a government if it's part of their mandate. So in the case of the coral reef insurance, it's actually the government who is the policyholder because it's very aligned with their mandate. But we are also looking into like hotel owners who might be interested, hotel owners who's located at the coastline and whose like income is really based on like tourism, and they could also be potential. So it's not. It really depends. There will be a lot of consultations, and definitely maybe it may not make sense for like a community member to like buy oil spill insurance in this case. I hope like we can talk later, but yeah. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Director Figueroa, for your speech. 感谢 Figueroa 女士的分享，让我们再次掌声感谢。